Another Gupta family member is trying to leave South Africa this week, despite a court order saying he can't. A nephew to the Gupta brothers, Varun Gupta, has to comply with strict bail conditions after being charged in connection with the Estina Dairy project scandal. eNCA's Erin Bates has been following the story and joins me now. So, Erin, who is Varun Gupta and why is he trying to leave South Africa and why can't he?
So Varun Gupta is a nephew to the Gupta brothers, who we know very well through their political affiliations. He wants to leave South Africa, he says, to attend a religious ceremony at a temple in New Delhi. And he's asked the court to allow him to leave on Saturday, and he says he will return to South Africa on the 27th of May.
And this is a difficulty, Erin, because, in many bail applications, that's really at the core of it, that will this person return to come and stand trial? I imagine that's part of the arguments that the prosecution has been presenting.
Yes, and they have, for example, looked at extradition agreements between South Africa and India and whether those are implemented. So they may exist in theory, but do they work in practice? And of course, we know there have been controversies over other Gupta members who've meant to answer, for example, to Parliament, to the courts, and haven't been around, have been sort of overtly scarce the last couple of months since that raid on the Gupta family compound in February. So that is a concern here. What is also a concern is the time at which he approached the court for this permission. So in fact, according to the bail permissions that were enforced in February when he first appeared on charges including corruption and fraud, there was an allowance there for an application to travel. But the requirement is that applicants approach the court 6 weeks prior to departure, and he hasn't done that.
And his departure date is when? This coming weekend?
Yes, on Saturday. So we don't have an answer yet from the magistrate in this case. He's remanded the matter until Friday, which is the day after another significant Gupta matter, which will be in the courts on Thursday in the Free State, and will then make a ruling. And Varun Gupta is hoping that he'll be able to fly on Saturday to go overseas. But another thing, Tulasizwe, that has emerged from proceedings today is an argument from his counsel that the NPA has a very weak case against him. And his counsel has listed several sort of factual errors he says indicates that the NPA just doesn't have its ducks in a row when it comes to this prosecution.
Yeah, in fact, it would appear from those arguments at least that the NPA has not covered itself in glory in this case. What exactly are these details that, don't align with what the prosecutors are alleging against Varun?
So they say Varun Gupta is a director or was a director at Oak Bay Resources, and that's distinct from Oak Bay Investments. So that's one example, they say, where the NPA has got it wrong. They also say that the NPA has relied on Home Affairs documents that say he's not married and doesn't have children. Again, his lawyer says, well, he is married, he's planning on going to this temple with his wife. These are factual sort of facts that the NPA just doesn't have right. I have approached the NPA in the Free State to ask if they agree with that representation of their case. And in court today, we heard that they're investigating the Bank of Baroda and its dealings with Gupta-linked companies. But the NPA spokesperson in the Free State laughed, in fact, when I cited some of the examples. And he said, it's neither here nor there whether someone's married or not. And from the tone of his response just on the phone, he seems quite confident that the NPA really does have a good, strong case, and those investigations are ongoing.
So another question that usually comes up when we talk about the Gupta family is, are they South African citizens? Do we know at this stage whether Varun Gupta intends to travel on a South African passport, for example?
That hasn't emerged in the court proceedings, but it's a pertinent question over his movements over the next couple of days and weeks. And there is a concern because he's not only asking to go to India to this New Delhi temple now, but that he wants to go, come back as he's committed to doing in court and through his lawyer, and then return to the same temple later in the year. So it's an ongoing application in a way because he wants to leave South Africa for India twice. But his lawyer has argued that he's so confident that there's a weak case against him that he has no qualms about coming back to South Africa, that the evidence he and his counsel have seen indicates that things are so weak and so unthreatening, you could say, that he has no issues with coming back to South Africa from that temple. Maybe he's going to make some prayers about proceedings going well, one doesn't know, and then answer to the courts.
Sure, and just finally, Erin, put it in context for us. This is the case that has seen many of the property of much of the property of the Gupta family being pursued by the Assets Forfeiture Unit of the NPA, is it?
Yes, quite right. And in fact, I was in court last week over that Gupta plane, this multi-million rand Gupta jet, which has been sitting at Lanseria International Airport grounded as one of the assets that's been seized by the Asset Forfeiture Unit. And in fact, the case we're going to see on Thursday in the Bloemfontein High Court is the Guptas approaching the courts to try and regain control over some of those assets pending the prosecutions over the Estina Dairy project. And Varun Gupta is one of the 8 people who appeared in court in February and face very serious charges, including fraud, allegations of corruption, attempts to commit fraud, and also theft. And that's government funds we're talking about.